In the UFC, there are always a lot of rumors about who's going to be fighting who, which brings about a lot of fake hype and contests that never materialize. Another rumor that has been doing the rounds for a while is that Randy Brown will be fighting surging welterweight Jack Della Maddalena at the UFC event in Australia. In today's video, we'll tell you if it's happening or not. First things first, has Randy Brown confirmed his fight with Jack Della at UFC Australia? UFC fights are some of the most highly anticipated events in the sporting world. One single fight is usually worth millions and millions of dollars. That is why there usually is a lot of talk in the media whenever there's a possibility of two notable UFC stars fighting against each other. The process usually goes through the following stages: rumored, reported, and finally confirmed. At first, rumors start circulating about the fighters' interest in fighting each other. At times, there are a lot of buildups if the rivalry between the fighters is big enough. For example, there was a lot of hype around Khabib fighting Conor McGregor before the fight was scheduled. The reason behind that is that even the rumors of two big fighters going against each other bring in a lot of views and money for the newspapers. With Randy Brown and Jack Della, similar rumors have been doing the rounds for a while. It was reported that the two would finally be going up against each other in Australia, where the UFC 284 event is being held. The stage will be set in the RAC Arena in Perth on the 12th of February this year, 2023. Australia is Jack Della's home turf, so we expect a lot of following for him there. It's now been pretty much confirmed that the two will be fighting each other. Up next, Randy Brown announces on Twitch that he'll be fighting Jack Della. Well, the three stages we mentioned, so the fighters also tried to build up hype around their bouts because that gets more people to their fights. Whether people tune in on the screens in their homes or come to watch the fight in person, the fighters get clout, and with clout comes money. So it's a PR stunt more than anything else. That is why even before the report came out from MMA Junkie about the scheduled fighting, Randy Brown already revealed on Twitch that he'll be competing against the Australian fighter Della Maddalena when the next UFC event is staged in Perth, Australia in February 2023. So even though the fight hadn't been officially announced, Randy was already talking about it on Twitch. That's how hype is built, and the fighters are quite aware. However, we have no issues with the strategy. The hype before a fight is where all the fun is. It gets everyone involved and increases the pressure on the fighters, making the events more interesting and nail-biting. So, by no means are we saying that it isn't okay. Moving on, Randy Rude Boy Brown looks raring to go to Australia. Randy Brown, who goes by the nickname Rude Boy, looks all set to go up against Della in Australia. He even posted a story in anticipation of the fight on his Instagram account, where he could be seen practicing with all the intensity. He posted a video on his Instagram of himself hitting the focus mitts. He was making it a point to everyone involved that he won't be going into this half-hearted. He'll be going all in. The caption on his Instagram video confirmed the fight between the two as it read, "I'm coming to Perth." That is quite typical of any UFC fighter, if you ask us. You won't ever find a fighter who would accept that they're not ready to fight someone. Whenever there's a question of two big fighters going up against each other, the only reasons we get from someone pulling out are injuries or scheduled problems. No fighter will ever accept that they don't want to fight someone. That's different from how the world of UFC works, and that doesn't even apply to someone like Randy Brown, as he's one of the best in the welterweight division. He has had it good so far in his career and is the dominant one in every fight. However, this time the opponent poses the same threat, so it will be interesting to see what happens. Next, how does Randy Brown's current form look like? Randy Brown is one of the most dominant fighters in the world of UFC. His record currently stands at 16-4, which is quite impressive. He's also been in good form recently. Since 2020, he's been in 5 fights and is currently on a streak of 4 straight wins. The last time he was in action was in October 2022 when he went up against Brazilian fighter Francisco Trinaldo in Las Vegas, Nevada. Randy defeated Francisco through a unanimous decision. Before that, he was up against Chaos Williams, then Jared Gooden in October 2021, and then Alex Oliveira at UFC 261 in Florida in April 2021. The 32-year-old Jamaican fighter won all of those fights. His last loss came in against Vicente Luque in August of 2020. It was a disappointing outing for the Jamaican as it ended in a KO in Luque's favor. Even though he has had 4 straight wins, this fight against Della might be more complex than his last few fights. Even if he wins, one thing that we're sure of is that it's going to be a real contest. The matchup, on paper at least, looks like a balanced affair. However, Randy would be confident that he could take down the Australian in his hometown. Up next, this sounds like the perfect outing for Jack Della. Even in street fights, being on your turf is bound to give you some advantage. So, with the UFC event being scheduled in Perth next month, it was the perfect place for Jack to compete. Jack won the Newcomer of the Year 2022 award and would be ecstatic to be able to compete in a fight that's being staged 10 minutes away from his place in Perth. The Australian went a flawless 3-0 in his rookie UFC season and gained a lot of supporters for himself. Around the UFC, people think they really have a potential star with a 26-year-old. After his debut season went so well, people are now curious how things will go for him when he eventually comes up against some of the bigger names in the UFC. Many fighters in the UFC aren't that keen to fight the Australian. Della, interestingly, revealed that he was turned down by 5 opponents before the fight with Randy Brown was finalized. The fact that so many fighters turned him down tells you something about how good he has looked so far in his short UFC career. Next, can Jack Della match Randy Brown's experience in the UFC? Compared to Randy, Della is one of the more inexperienced fighters in the UFC. Even though he's had a pretty good record in the UFC in the short time he's been with them, stepping up to fight with a veteran like Randy might be too far for the 26-year-old Australian. However, he is confident with the start he has made in the UFC. In his debut season, he earned various accolades, including the Rookie of the Year award from ESPN and the Newcomer of the Year award from Cage Side Press. In 2021, he was a winner of Dana White's Contender Series. He made his official debut in the UFC exactly 1 year ago when he came up against Pete Rodriguez at UFC 270. In his debut fight, he earned a TKO stoppage inside a round. In comparison, Brown is one of the more experienced fighters in the UFC. He has been with the UFC since 2016 and is a former Ring of the Combat welterweight champion. Since joining the promotion, he has been in the best form of his career. He would be looking to cash in on his experience when he meets Jack in Perth next month. It's definitely going to be a pretty close affair. Finally, Jack Della can't contain his excitement at being able to compete on his home turf. Jack's last outing was against Danny Roberts in November 2022, a first-round TKO victory. So he's coming fresh from an impressive win. From the time of that win, he's been quite adamant that he'll be competing at UFC 284. After the win, the Australian talked to Full Send MMA, where he predicted that he would take part in February's event that will take place in Perth. He practically couldn't contain his excitement and said, 100% yeah, which tells you the level of his excitement. At that time, he had no doubt that he'll be on the card for the UFC 284 event. The excitement mainly has to do with the event being held in his hometown, which should give him the confidence to be in the ring. He'll have his home crowd to back him up. He also spoke to the UFC after his win against Roberts, where he shared that he's stoked about the possibility of competing in Perth. He shared that he's fully motivated to be on that big card and emulate the results of his fight against Danny Roberts. He said that being able to do that in a place just minutes away from his home makes him feel on top of the whole world. And that's a wrap for today's video. What are your thoughts on the UFC 284 event being held in Australia? Will home advantage help Della take the win in this one? Or will Brown's experience help him to win against the newcomer? Don't forget to let us know in the comment section. Please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for all the latest news in town. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.